Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I talk about mesh messaging systems in Hong Kong, the latest VR headset from HTC Vive, and a brief rundown of what you need to know about the Apple event. Plus, a little bit more, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 99, recorded Thursday, September 12th, 2019. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Monday.com. Monday.com helps teams manage work and meet deadlines while building a culture of transparency. Manage all your core business activities in one place. You can learn more at monday.com/TNW.
And by Zapier. Zapier connects all your business software and handles the work for you so you can focus on what matters most. Right now through November, go to zapier.com/TNW for your free 14-day trial. Hello, and welcome back to Tech News Weekly, the show where we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I happen to be Mikah Sargent.
Today, you are Mikah Sargent. We'll see who you are tomorrow. I'm Jason Howell. It's good to have you back. You were out last week.
Yeah.
Great to have you sit next to me here.
I'm glad you still got the fist bump in from somebody, though. That was good. That was good.
That's right. I think that was John Slanina swooped in at the very last second. I never know whose fist I'm going to bump on the show, but it seems to always happen eventually.
Happens,
so it's good.
And it's good.
Hong Kong, I'm sure you've noticed by now, is undergoing an unprecedented political crisis. Pro-democracy democracy protesters hitting the streets in days-long widespread demonstrations. Along the way, Chinese government has looked to squash the movement and keep it from increasing in size and power. And in so doing, they've censored the internet for its citizens. But technology has a strange way of working around limitations like that. That much we know from doing this show for as long as we have. John Koetsier is a journalist and analyst who actually wrote a piece for Forbes that detailed one way that the protesters have been staying in contact with each other through all of this. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to get you on. So first things first, kind of taking a step back here, what kinds of barriers have been placed on the internet for these protesters to begin with? What are they up against that would need them to kind of move to some sort of new technology to communicate?
Well, they're living in Greater China, right? And in mainland China, the internet is totally monitored. It's controlled. That's at an application level. So WeChat might be the most popular app to communicate, text, chat, and pay with, and all the other things in China. And that's controlled right at the application level. The government can see what's going on there and censor that in real time. And people have been caught and punished for saying things that they ought not to, according to the government of China. That's also at the location level. I mean, getting out of the internet in China is challenging, and many things that we see as normal in our internet experience, like Google or probably Skype, other things like LinkedIn, Facebook, are not available. So they're living in a culture, in a country where they're being challenged in terms of what they can communicate and what they can't communicate. Now, they're in Hong Kong, so there is a difference, right? There has been this one country, two systems policy, but this protest is all about the government coming in and controlling more and more. And so they're seeing that come in at the edges, and they're starting to react to it.
Yeah, and react, in ways that, well, I mean, obviously there was an app developer that could have foreseen this, because an app kind of swooped in to save the day, it seems like. I had never heard of it before. You wrote about an app called Bridgefy. Talk about how this app works, how it's being used in this particular situation.
Well, let's assume that we are right next to each other and we text each other on our phones, right? And we're connected to the internet. Let's say you text me. You're connected to the internet via cellular connection or maybe a Wi-Fi connection. And even though we're right next to each other, it's going to go up to the internet and cross a couple different networks and come down over my cellular or my Wi-Fi network to my phone. That's not how this app works. That's centralized and controllable. This app just uses Bluetooth, the same thing that you use to use your AirPods or your wireless speakers or many other devices that connect, a Bluetooth mouse or something like that. So it's got limited range, but with that Bluetooth, it can reach out to another device about 300 feet or 100 meters away and can say, hey, I'm here, and send you a message. And not only that, that's a limited range, but the app is basically a mesh networking app so that I can hop over somebody else's connection to somebody else's connection to somebody else's connection and reach somebody half a city away.
Wow, and that's really cool. Like such a unique way around these limitations. Is there a way for the government to like recognize that this is? Well, I mean, there's probably a way for them to recognize that this is being used. They have access to the internet after all, and you wrote about it. I'm sure they're aware in many other ways, but are there any controls that they can put in place to protect against the citizens using this technology?
It's hard to imagine a centralized way of killing this, although you can obviously purchase devices that can kill cellular connections. You can purchase devices that can clog up radio waves, other things like that. There are some limitations, however. This app was developed primarily for situations like a disaster, where cellular connections have gone down, maybe like in the Bahamas recently, or really congested spaces like a concert or something like that, where, you've been in a public place, maybe a concert, and there's like 50,000 people all trying to use this one cellular tower that's right next to there, and you can't get through. So that's what it was designed for. So there are some ways that you could see somebody's name or connect them to a message. There are also some safeguards against that, but perhaps not as many as the protesters might like.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds to me the power that the government has is all based on this centralized idea where they have control over everything because it's all going to government-controlled facilities or usage technologies. So is this the one form of decentralization that we're seeing used to kind of allow these protests to take place? Are there other opportunities that people are sort of implementing this decentralization in order to sort of circumvent the government control?
I wouldn't say it's the only. I mean, if you're on the internet in China, you've probably tried to get a VPN, which can be challenging now as well. You probably tried various forms of encryption, which again can be challenging. But in Hong Kong, you can still access the iOS App Store, for instance. You can still access most of the internet, if not almost all of it. And so you can find anonymous messaging apps and other things like that. So there are multiple other ways. This is just one interesting one that the protesters happen to catch on to and happen to start downloading en masse and use.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about that last part that you just mentioned. If you don't have access to the internet, how on earth do you find this app or service, find out that it exists, and B, download it to your device when you can't access the internet to begin with? Any thoughts there? I mean, maybe a VPN could be one way. Maybe they're just getting lucky, or maybe it's possible to transfer these, the install file phone to phone. I don't know how you do this in mass.
I wish you could do that last on iOS. You can't. But
right.
Bear in mind that they're in Hong Kong, and it still has that one country, two systems policy. So there still is the ability to access the bulk of the internet that's out there. China is starting to control that, but they haven't completed that yet. So they can still access a lot of these things and get them. Now, if you are on Android, for instance, you could sideload an application. You can get an APK and sideload it, and you don't necessarily need to connect to the Play Store to do so. That's dangerous. You don't know what's in there. You don't know if it's got a virus, if that's got some protocols that somebody might be listening to, maybe even the government. But there is that possibility.
Absolutely. Now, what about the user base here? Obviously, if suddenly, a whole swath of Hong Kong protesters are downloading and installing this app, that's a good thing for Bridgefy and their user base. Like, what were they looking at prior to this, and have they seen a significant, notable jump as a result?
Right. So I checked a third-party analytics firm, and it said that usage of the app was up about 4,000% in 1 week, which was pretty impressive. I also talked to the creator of the app, and he told me that they had over 60,000 downloads in 1 week, and that was about a week ago. Mm-hmm. It may have increased since then as well. Probably is more now.
Right, because it's all about a matter of growing numbers, a critical mass. The more people are using it, the more everyone else feels like, oh, well, obviously we got to be there too, because if we want to do this right, we want to be part of the whole conversation. That's just what you have to do, and obviously it's effective. Have you spent any time with the app yourself? Have you tested it at all to see kind of if there are any meshes near you? I imagine it's not the easiest thing to just load up and expect that someone within Bluetooth range of you is going to be on this app at the same time. Probably doesn't happen that way.
I did grab it. I did download it. I've got it right now. But no, sadly, there's nobody near me that I can Bridgefy with.
Well, that's too bad. We got to change that. Who knows? Maybe this will become the communication method of choice down the line. How many people would you say are using this, like, at any given time? And what is I'm curious, like, the interface? Is it meant for just anyone near anyone else that's using the app, they can communicate, or is it like a friend-based system, or what about that?
Yeah, there's kind of two protocols there. One of them is that kind of friend-based system where you know somebody and you're messaging them directly. The other is a broadcast mode, and that's for anybody that is within that 100 meters, 300 feet, that has Bridgefy and has it active, and it just broadcasts out to them. So that would be pretty interesting if you're one of the protesters and you want to communicate with the group, with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably the safer way to do it as well, without as much identifying yourself.
Yeah. Speaking of that, that's kind of the big curiosity that I have. What protections are in place with this app for anonymization, or is the point of this app to sort of, identify yourself? Because if you're broadcasting, are you broadcasting with your profile, with your name attached to it? Are there possibilities for sort of tracking down an individual person? And there are several apps out there that do some form of this kind of Bluetooth mesh communication. So I'm kind of curious, was this one chosen because it does a better job of helping with anonymization, or what are the thoughts there in terms of kind of the protesters protecting themselves?
It's a great question, and sadly, the answer is mostly no. There are not great protections for privacy here because it was primarily built by the developer for a concert solution or a disaster relief solution, and not intended for private communication with a totalitarian government in charge of the whole internet. And the protesters just happened to find it and started using it because it worked for them. But I have been informed that there are ways that you can track down people's names, certainly with the person-to-person communication, but also some ways that you can identify who a person might be with the broadcast functionality. So I actually talked with the developer about that a little bit, and he's looking at potentially making some changes to make that possible. But that wasn't the use case that he built the app for. It may tend to be a little dangerous, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, all it takes is a moment like this for a developer, creating such an app, to learn through this experience what the app still doesn't offer, that actually in this situation an app like this should offer, or what the people believe. So yes. I'm sure the developers are taking a lot of notes. Yeah. They're kind of in a perfect storm situation in the sense that they suddenly have this great user base and a very specific kind of use case to compare against in order to broaden out development. You spoke with them. Obviously, this is a very tumultuous time in Hong Kong, but the developers of the app must be optimistic about the opportunity that they're given right now.
They were very pleasantly surprised. They had no idea. They were not marketing this app in Hong Kong. Sure. They were not intending for this use purpose, and it was discovered, and it's aiding protesters connect and communicate, which is a wonderful thing. And they're considering other things that they can do to their app to enhance security for situations like this.
Yeah, right on. Well, John Koetsier, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Where do you want to point people who want to find you and follow you online?
Twitter is a great place, at johnkoetsier.com. It's a horrible name, I know. Nobody can spell it, but
your name is great.
It's a good name.
It's a good name, John. Koetsier for those listening to the show.
You got it. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for carving out some time for us today. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
All righty. Up next, we take a step into virtual reality. Not actually. We're not going to put on a virtual reality goggle, but Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica is going to join us to talk a little bit about the newly announced and revealed HTC Vive Cosmos VR system. Got some inside-out tracking going on there. Talk about that up next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Monday.com. Monday.com not only helps teams manage work and meet deadlines, also helps build a culture of transparency to work better together. So you can manage all your core business activities in one single place, from high-level roadmaps to specific day-to-day tasks. And join over 65,000 teams already getting things done by using Monday.com. Monday.com, of course, it's easy to use. You can build a board from scratch. You can choose from a selection of templates, which is nice. If you don't know where to start, you just grab a template, tailor it to your team's workflow. You can automate your workflows with reminders and notifications to keep you on task, keep everything flowing nicely. You can upload files directly from your computer, Dropbox, or even Google Drive. Monday.com is perfect for any team. It's just so easy to jump in and get started and get everybody on board. It's suitable for any size, from 2 freelancers working together to thousands collaborating across the globe. And it's popular among teams, often replacing those things that we consider burdensome, things like Excel files and big whiteboards and excessively long meetings. Monday.com can help trim those things down and make you less reliant on that stuff. Monday.com keeps you on track. You can create accountability by assigning owners to keep track of who's doing what and when. You'll never miss a deadline with the feature My Week. That's a personal assistant for you and your team. You can stay in control anywhere you go by using the Monday.com mobile app. We spoke a few weeks ago, Mikah, that you were using Monday.com for iOS today. How has that been going, that integration?
It's really great because of the way that it has these plug-in features that make it simple to kind of tell the state of where a project is. And so there's kind of like a fun little temperature sensor, and it's like, oh yeah, everything's good. We don't have to worry about things, or things are falling behind. Yeah. And so you can easily see that. It's got a built-in calendar feature. A lot of the plugins make this kind of the go-to platform, I think, when it comes to collaboration. And like we said, as far down as 2 freelancers, or in this case, Leo and I working together for the show planning, or a huge team. And that idea of being able to tell, the transparency goal that Monday has, of being able to tell who's working on what, and then you can be there for that person if they are falling behind in a project, or knowing that, hey, you're slipping behind, everybody else on my team has already got everything done. That's really nice.
Yeah, the accountability aspect, super important. Learn more and start your own 14-day free trial by going to monday.com/TNW. That's monday.com/TNW for your free 2-week trial. You get 2 weeks free. We thank monday.com for their support of this show. Now, if you've been following the progression of virtual reality, you know that the next big thing is inside-out tracking. The next big thing is inside-out tracking without being tethered to a PC, but that's for a different day. For now, HTC has unveiled its upcoming Vive Cosmos VR system that satisfies at least the first next big thing that I just mentioned. Joining the show now, welcoming back Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica to talk all about it. Sam, I've missed you. How are you?
Oh, I've missed you too. I swear I haven't just been ducking into virtual reality headsets to avoid y'all. But yeah, it's a funny thing that HTC has come forward with, the HTC Vive Cosmos. This was teased earlier this year in a really vague fashion with a video that showed a bunch of cameras built into the headset and no technical specs, no exact expectation of what it would deliver. Turns out Vive has an office just down the road from me here in Seattle, Washington, where they're building all of their American ops. And they had the Vive Cosmos ready for me to test out, along with the release date, October 3rd, where it will be on sale for computers for $699. That means you pay that $700 and you get the headset, a pair of controllers, and nothing else. I mean, the wires to connect to the PC, but there's no extra tracking boxes. Now, VR, there's, I want to say 8 million versions of VR out there. It can be confusing. But with computer VR, there's been some moves towards wireless VR and some moves towards inside-out tracked VR. The latter is what we get here, in that you're not setting up webcams, you're not setting out tracking boxes that the headset then reads. There's a whole different way to describe how Inside Out works and some technicalities, but the bottom line is you plug this into the PC and that's it, because the cameras that are mounted, one on the top, one on the bottom, one on each side, left and right, and then 2 facing out in that sort of Johnny Five short circuit way. They all combine to read the room, kind of get a sense of what room you're in, and automatically map walls and windows, and also look at the marks on your controllers in your hand, these things that replicate your hands in VR space. And yeah, it would have been a really awesome thing if that had come out in January before some of the better Windows mixed reality sets and Oculus's own Rift S had come out, essentially saying, yeah, we're also doing inside-out tracking, and we're doing it for cheaper.
Okay. I mean, HTC, I feel like came out of the gate strongly, pretty strongly years ago. when all of this was first developing and first starting this like resurgence into VR. And then kind of seems like it's spent a lot of time playing a little bit of catch up. At least I don't hear as many people talking about the HTC Vive headsets as I do the Oculus, and especially the Quest seems to be getting a lot of attention. I played with the Quest. I loved it. Probably my favorite VR setup.
I would say the one big reason is that HTC has been stuck on the Vive and the Vive Pro. These have always been positioned to be expensive. They've never come out with an entry-level Vive. Yeah. So coming down from about $1,000 to $1,200 as a starting kit for the Vive Pro to $700 may seem like a bargain if you're only looking at the Vive Pro, because this is similar to the Vive Pro, which adds more pixels. It's actually a slight bit more dense in terms of pixel density on the lenses than the Vive Pro itself. But there's other headsets out there that are also getting the resolution up now. And they've been kind of either it's gotten to 2019 now where it's not just undercutting on price, it's also adding features. And if you look at something like the Valve Index, which is altogether $1,000, but can be got for less piecemeal, it's got kind of a better sales proposition in that price land. So Vive has slept on getting something out there that says, oh yeah, it's only going to cost $400 plus the extra computer. I mean, there's just so much money involved in these things, and the sales pitch really has to get somewhere. I could jump ahead of myself and tell you what's wrong with the Cosmos that I found in about 15 minutes of testing.
I think we need to know. I mean, one thing that I read about that you talked about the displays on the inside is that they actually changed technology. They changed from OLED to LCD. And I don't know, what are your thoughts? Is that an improvement? Does that get rid of some of the screen door effect? What do you think there?
Well, that's switching from OLED. The biggest reason is, well, there's two big reasons. One, to reduce that screen door effect, as in those visible tiny stair steps that appear no matter where the pixels are, and also to get the price down. OLED is expensive. That's printing OLED panels. The incurred cost is like they have to throw them away because they're using organic stuff, and they're a pain in the butt to manufacture. That's why LG's amazing OLED sets cost so much money, and so you get a little bit less of that stair step, which is great when you're talking about game immersion, but the colors aren't quite there. There's something a little fainter about that color. And when you have a screen pressed directly to your face to replicate the real world, that's different than getting a smartphone that's switching from OLED to something else. That the ability to swallow that color depth is a little different. And it was just something that was really noticeable with the Cosmos, in the same way that the Valve Index and the Oculus Rift S also switched from OLED to LCD, and they also suffer that. But I feel like in my very brief testing that HTC needs to work on that color balance. They have a toggle in it, and they told me go ahead and hit vibrant, and that helped, but not necessarily enough where I said, oh, I should spend more than the other rivals. Because again, $700 for the set is the price I would expect if it had OLED, if it had those rich colors. So, and in terms of the screen door effect, I got to test more. Again, 15-minute test of a world premiere is not a great way to be clear on exactly how crisp this is. But I did notice they're using what seems to be a smearing effect, which other headsets will use to reduce the screen door effect. Some smearing will happen. And if you're playing anything with text, and that's happening more, especially if you're like in an industrial use case and you want to imagine what a real world architectural thing is going to look like, that text legibility is important. And some of it was surprisingly smudgy, which might be good in a game, might not be good in other use cases. So that the jury's out on that one.
So one of the questions that I have, so right now, are we looking at, because we kind of talked about where HTC Vive is and we talked about where Oculus is this just a matter of HTC Vive sort of falling behind because they haven't caught up because they were so focused on the HTC Vive Pro? Or is this a matter of, do we think the companies are going two different ways, where we've got HTC Vive focusing? I know that everything in VR is still kind of in the nerdy pro section, but there are still sort of individual sections within that. Is Oculus kind of trying to go more toward the everyday consumer, and HTC Vive is going a different way? Or are we just seeing kind of HTC Vive is behind in the race and now they're trying to catch up? Because it still seems so hard to access.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing was that they were telling me at the office when I talked to some of their reps about how this was aiming for something lower end. They're still going to go with the Pro line. Like the Vive Pro is going to be a thing that will be sold at its own price, and that this is targeting a prosumer but a little lower level. But that's really hard. I mean, the price points are the answer to that. You can get a Rift S for $400. You can get a Quest for $400, and the latter doesn't require a computer. Oculus is definitely, that's a Facebook company. They want to be in everybody's house, and the data, the tracking, the use, they will get their money's worth if they can make that happen, if they can lead that platform, if they can get us into their VR future operating system, which I'm pretty sure they want to do in the next 3 to 5 years, of have us get in there and have all these ads streaming at our faces all the time. And HTC's not there. HTC is more interested in being a platform for apps. They're huge into this thing called Viveport. It's a subscription service where you just get VR app after VR app after VR app. And if you're an enthusiast and you just want to test a ton of software, and around the world, that may very well be the case in the East, in India and China, where VR is being embraced in different ways, that's its own use case of going, yeah, I'm living the VR dream. I want all of this software. I want to know what innovative indie teams are making in VR. That is its own case. But I don't know that there's a giant mass market of people who want to spend that much on the headset, that much on the computer, and then get the subscription service. I suppose once you spend that much money, you're kind of stuck in that ecosystem. The other thing I want to point out that the Vive Cosmos needs to work on is its controllers. Yeah. They're trying to get gamer-like controllers. They've given up on the wands, these little old touchpad things, which no longer really work in games. They're heavy. These things have extra bright lights built into them, and everything I tested was pretty mild. Once I had to actually wave my arms around in one game, it felt the little bit of extra weight goes a long way when it's your hands that are the primary thing. You don't have to worry about the weight if you're just moving a tiny joystick around on an Xbox, but here, just those extra few grams can make all the difference. And I'm not, I like VR and I'm relatively fit, and I felt tired. So I don't know if that's going to really work. If they're going to target people going, yeah, I want to play Beat Saber. Well, I want to be able to play Beat Saber for more than 10 minutes before I'm done, before it hurts. So that's its own funky thing. There's just a bunch of little stuff about it that I don't think that HTC quite knows what it's doing, or maybe it's East and Western company heads. There's a Seattle company that's running operations for a much larger company on the other side of the planet. I don't know. It all seems a little confusing, but I want to test it out more. They say they're gonna hand it to me in October, and I'll dig in and I will report back.
Absolutely. There's also modularity, which is a component of this, and I couldn't tell what that actually leads to. What is so modular about this device? Does that include the swappable faceplates? Is that more like a luxury, personalization approach? Or is it something bigger?
It's a great question, because we don't quite know. Again, the Valve Index has a little removable plate, and it exposes a USB slot. It's very simple, and they advertise that just for hackers and enterprisers. But Vive, HTC Vive, has the whole front of it pops off, and that removes 2 cameras. That's a pretty big functional change if you want to swap that out. So what do you put on it instead? Their first pitch is something that actually makes not only the old Lighthouse tracking boxes, but also other kinds of controllers compatible. You swap in sort of a new one. You could use, for example, the Valve Knuckles controllers, which I love, or other kind of Steam VR products that you could attach. And then I said, well, what else is going to happen? And the HTC reps just had this giant grin and this totally cookie cutter corporate response, which to me says either they're BSing me or they've got something crazy in the works in terms of expanding how you interact with the virtual world. Maybe the kind of cameras that project even more of the real world on the virtual. This has a little bit of that, where you'll see the real world mixed in, but it was a little fishy. It actually lost tracking and got me dizzy and lost. It was some sort of bug that they're working on, which is why I didn't talk about that very much in my article. But they leave the question mark open, and either they have something amazing and crazy, or they're BSing me to make me say that they might have something crazy and amazing.
Yes, because if they leave a little bit of doubt, then all you can do is speculate and wonder what's around the corner, whether they have something around the corner or not. Yeah. It's a true magician approach. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like obviously you only got 15 minutes with it. Sounds like there are definite concerns here, and we aren't going to have to wait too much longer to find out more, right?
Right, yeah. October 3rd, that's when it's going to be on sale. Shortly after that, they'll have an adapter for HTC's wireless VR adapter, which works with the current Vive. So you don't have to get a whole new wireless thing.
Well, that's good.
If you want to plug that in and have wireless. That adds a little lag and latency depending on your house, the wireless signal, blah, blah, blah. And that's HTC has led, at least, in making that accessible, but you're still paying more for that adapter and so on. But yeah, there's more to guess, but it's just hard to get people to spend that much money on a system and tell them, oh, this is the one. The Valve Index at $1,000, I'm like, that is the one. It's just an insane price. And then Oculus's lower end stuff, I go, yeah, it's a good. There's some compromises, but you get it. Is this the sweet spot in the middle between being kind of expensive but not the most? I don't know, but I'm still going to be dumping my head into VR either way.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'm, just to kind of round this out, one thing that I'm really curious about right now is kind of what you're talking about. What is the sweet spot for the general consumer? VR has went through this really explosive couple of years where it was like, oh, VR is the next big, amazing thing. And then, the temperature kind of cooled a little bit on VR. But then Quest came out, and the Oculus Quest is by no means the most powerful VR system out there. But, inside-out tracking, wireless, $400. It checked enough boxes that it really seemed like the best of all worlds, at least based on what we have right now. Is HTC going to come out, do you think, with something in that category? It kind of seems like they should, even though it's not power. It's for the majority of people who might think about getting VR, that seems like the best case scenario.
Here's the thing. HTC has its own internal development studios for software, but nothing like Oculus. When Oculus came out with the Quest, that they had been working with developers, bringing some in-house, helping them get their games and apps to run on the Quest, because you do have to downgrade to what's essentially a Google Pixel 2, not the newest smartphone SoC inside of the Quest.
No.
And so when you get into Quest, you have that whole suite of software. You can put it on and immediately go, this works. I don't need the most expensive computer in the world. $400 is a lot, but also it's right at that weird point. I think $400 is that perfect weird point where you go, yeah, this costs money. And yeah, it's not perfect, but I'm going to get something out of it. Yeah. I think Quest changed the whole game. Yeah. I still call it the best VR system of 2019, even though I love my computer, even though I love the extra power, the crazy full giant worlds. Whenever Valve comes out with whatever its VR game is at the end of this year, that's going to be only on computer, blah, blah, blah. That's great. But yeah, Quest changed the whole game, and it's got Facebook's money in order to do so. And I understand HTC doesn't have the Facebook war chest in order to slash prices and get down to there. Like, yeah, you're paying $700 because you're not buying Facebook's ecosystem. So at that point, it's, well, if I don't want to have Facebook attached to my face, is it HTC? Is it Valve? Is it the HP or Lenovo kind of Windows mixed reality? There's a lot of stuff out there. So, but I don't blame anybody for saying, well, Facebook is cheap, but it's also Facebook. So,
yep. Absolutely. Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica. Always enjoy bringing you on, Sam. Thank you so much for telling us about your thoughts.
A quick pitch?
Yes, please.
Tomorrow, speaking of VR, I have a feature-length interview with Bjork about her new virtual reality pop album called Lonifer VR, and it's insane. I recommend talking to Bjork if you ever get the chance. So tune into arstechnica.com tomorrow to check that out. Please.
All right, get your people in touch with our people so we can get Bjork on the network stat. Appreciate it. Right on. That's awesome. I'll definitely be looking for that. Sam Machkovech, thank you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Thanks. And coming up next, we will be talking with Dan Moren from Six Colors about all the big Apple news from this week's event. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Zapier. There it is. Growing a business is hard, and you don't want to be wasting hours every day moving data from emails to spreadsheets to your CRM to wherever you need it to go. Shouldn't that just happen? Well, that's what Zapier does. It has over 1,500 plus apps and is the easiest way to automate your work so you get to focus on what matters most. You can connect all the business software you have to engage your leads instantly, automatically import new customers when you get them. You can easily send notifications to your team about opportunities, and Zapier is also more customizable. They support multi-step zaps, so the possibilities are virtually endless. You can easily connect all of the different software that you use to say, hey, when this happens, I want you to send emails to my marketing team. And when this happens, I want you to send emails to social, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, endless possibilities. You can build the solution you need in minutes, so you don't have to waste your time on tasks that could be automated, because that's exactly what Zapier was built to do. In fact, that's kind of what's fun about Zapier is you go and you do a thing, and then you go and you do a thing, and around about the second time, you might not catch on to it, but by the third time, you're like, wow, I just keep doing this thing over and over again. I wonder if I could build a Zap for it. And then suddenly, I'm in Zapier going, ooh, I can connect this, and then I'm coding, and it can get pretty wild because Zapier's a lot of fun to play with. So go to zapier.com/TNW, connect the apps you use most, and let Zapier take it from there. And best of all, it's easy to build the exact solution you need in just minutes without writing code or asking a developer for help. Join more than 4.5 million people who are saving an average of 40 hours per month. That is money by using Zapier. Now, like I said, I hop in there. It lets you do custom stuff where you are executing some code and things like that, but you don't have to do that. Like for me, one of the things that I wanted was every time I post a photo on Instagram and it has the hashtag dogs in it, then please take that photo and move it to a Flickr library that I created. And the reason why is because I have it set up with my website. So automatically there's a place where all the photos of my dogs show up on my website because I am that dog dad. So thank you, Zapier, for helping me be my dog's social media manager. I really appreciate it. But you can do a lot with your business too. It's not just for social media chihuahua management. Now, make more time to grow your business right now through November. You can try Zapier for free by going to zapier.com/TNW. That's zapier.com/TNW for your free 14-day trial. Thanks so much, Zapier. That's zapier.com/TNW. Now, I don't know, did you hear Apple had an event this week?
I did not.
Oh, well, they definitely did.
Actually, I did.
Okay,
You're right. You couldn't avoid it. Literally, the news was sucked out of the world on Tuesday.
There was an Apple black hole.
Yes.
Or was it a midnight black hole?
I'm used to this black hole at this point. It happens every year.
Yeah. And so Apple's latest offerings for the wrist, the pocket, the hand, the desk, I guess, are here. And from Apple's new subscription services for games and televisions to its new iPhones and watches, there was a whole lot announced. And thank goodness we've got Dan Moren of Six Colors here to help us break down the news. Welcome back, Dan.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
We're doing peachy keen. Happy to have you here. I want to start things off by talking about services. Apple is ramping up its services game, and that starts with Apple Arcade. Can you tell us a little bit about what folks can expect from Apple Arcade?
Sure. I mean, it's literally the services game there because we're talking 100+ games available to basically anybody who's got an iOS device, an Apple TV, a Mac, almost anything except short of maybe the HomePod and the Apple Watch. And essentially, you can play games across all those services. You can play them online or offline. And these are high quality games that you'll have access to. So not games that like nickel and dime you asking for in-app purchases all the time or where you have to buy in-game currencies sort of keep up with things. And all that will be available for just $5 a month, which is a pretty solid deal. You might be paying easily twice that for games of this caliber.
Yeah, and it starts off with how long is the trial? Do you recall?
I think it's a 7-day free trial that they're kicking off with. And it might be a month. Sorry, I'm getting confused with the other too many services.
The other one,
the
Apple TV Plus. Yeah. That's kind of the next one. One of the things with Apple TV Plus is I noticed they've got tv.apple.com that you can go to and watch Apple TV Plus when it launches, which means that if I'm on my Windows PC or my Banana OS smart device, I can easily go and check it out no matter where I am. Is that kind of a hint at the way that Apple's sort of coming out of the walled garden?
Yeah, I mean, if they're trying to bulk up their services revenue, which they clearly are, then a big part of that is making it available to as many people as possible, regardless of what platform. Traditionally, like you said, Apple's been really big on getting people to use its own devices. But if you're trying to make as much money as possible, you need to be where all the people are. So that means being on the web. It means being on other set-top boxes. It means being on smart TVs. All of those things put together mean that Apple wants to cast the widest net possible to bring in as many customers as it can.
Did the pricing of Apple TV Plus surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, Apple is not traditionally a company that competes on the bottom line, right? They are traditionally a premium focused company. So everybody was expecting things like, $10 a month, and wondering how that would work with the amount of content that was available, especially compared to things like Disney Plus, which was running around $7 a month. So they undercut that at $5 a month, and more to the point, gave a free year available to anybody who buys a new iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, or Mac, basically in the next few months, if not years. We don't know quite how long it's going to go, but a free year is a lot of time.
Yeah, a whole year to check that out and see if that's something that you're going to get invested in.
And over that time, you'll watch something, you'll get hooked on it, and then you'll be like, I guess I have to. I want to know what happens.
Yep, that's right.
I need to know.
The first one's free.
I need to know what happens in Oprah's book club because that was a cliffhanger. No, Apple Watch. So there'd been a lot of speculation that Apple doesn't need to launch a new series for our Series 5 watch. It's a Series 4 was kind of A-okay where it is. And we did see some improvements, but I'm curious, do you think that the always-on display, the emergency calling internationally, and the Compass app are enough to really deserve the Series 5 moniker, or is this just Apple kind of sticking with its yearly release?
Yeah, I think that it's using a similar approach as it's using on the phone these days, right? Where from one model to the next, it might not be a major improvement. People are saying the same thing about the iPhone 11, for example, over the 10s. And that's certainly true. If you have a Series 4, going out and buying a Series 5 may not seem terribly compelling. But if you're coming from anything that's pre-Series 4, you get all the benefits of the Series 4 and you get all those new Series 5 features like the always-on display and the Compass on top of that. So I think it's a testament to how Apple wants to keep releasing models that are better rather than letting anything sort of lie stagnant. I don't think they need to release a new watch every year, but if they've shown that they can do it and sort of continually push the envelope, then that's something they'll probably try.
And I think the always-on display, that's a pretty key feature for a lot of people. It's definitely been a complaint in smartwatches, not just limited to the Apple Watch. It's like literally for as long as watches have existed, you can always look no matter what angle and you know what time it is on smartwatches. Thankfully we're seeing that more.
Yeah, it was huge for me. I certainly was excited about it, but I know that for some people that's not necessarily something that they want or need, and so it's clear that keeping around the Series 3 and having the Series 5, having those both there, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So for folks who, are just kind of looking at these devices, looking at the announcements and see there's the iPhone 11 and there's the iPhone 11 Pro. What is it that makes the Pro model Pro? What are the things that takes it to that next level, as it were?
Well, the biggest thing obviously is the camera system, which they're billing as a pro level camera system. And of course, there's been a lot of consternation over what pro means. Apple certainly uses it more as a marketing term than actually something that is designed for professionals, in the same way that a MacBook Pro is something that a professional might use, but still might appeal to just a power user, or what we used to call a prosumer. And I think that the iPhone 11 Pro is aiming for that same sort of market. It's for people who really want the best, most cutting edge a smartphone available to them. And in this case, it means primarily that camera with the third telephoto lens that's not available on the iPhone 11, and all the things that combination of three lenses can do as in terms of computational photography. So I think that's one of the big things that's pushing it forward. There's obviously some smaller details like things like capacities. There are sizes of memory that you can't get on the iPhone 11. And so it's just a matter of sort of taking off that top end of the market that really wants the best thing available.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I understand sort of the iPhone 11 being the people's phone is kind of what Leo has been calling it, and I really like that because it is being sort of marketed, pushed forward as the one for most people, with the Pro being the more expensive one. Now, here's a bit of let's shake up the bones and read the tea leaves and all other number of fortune telling. Dan, do you think we're going to see another event this year, possibly in October? Because I don't know about you, but I'm still waiting on the Mac Pro.
Yeah, let me grab my magic 8-ball and see what it has to say. I think for sure there's enough stuff that was not shown off in the event this week that make me feel like there's something more that could be coming down the pike. As you mentioned, the Mac Pro. There were pretty substantial rumors about a new 16-inch MacBook Pro also in the pipeline. And we heard a lot about those Apple trackers, the Tile competitors, and didn't see anything about that, even though the sort of ultra-wideband radio chip that's used to enable that is in the new iPhone. So I would not be surprised at all to see an October event. That's something Apple's done a bunch in the last many years. So there seems to be plenty left in the pipeline that they could fill another hour or two.
And then the one last question I have for you, was there anything worth mentioning that you've learned since the keynote that didn't actually make it into the keynote or wasn't sort of a standout feature or improvement that was shared on stage?
I actually think the ultra wideband, which is this U1 chip. So we've seen Apple making all these custom chips, especially in the smartphones and iPads over the last few years. And this is a new technology, ultra wideband, and it enables some cool things like the ability to get directionality, for example. The feature they're talking about on the website is, so if you've used AirDrop to share a file with somebody else, and you've seen like a bunch of different phones pop up and you're like, I don't know, I have to scroll through a bunch of different phones to find the person I'm looking for. It now supports a directionality, so you can point your phone, say, at your friend's phone, and they will be the first item on the list. And that obviously enables a lot of other possible functions, including this whole sort of device tracking. Hey, where's my iPhone? And sort of playing, hot and cold with it as you walk around your room. So I think that's a big deal, and you're only going to see more made about that in the future.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Dan. Get ready.
I'm
no,
ready.
It's not too hot of a spot. Charlie Warzel posted an editorial in the New York Times that really made the rounds on Twitter. I saw everybody piping in on this one, claiming that the spectacle of Apple events was unnecessary, said it was kind of tone deaf. What are your thoughts here? I know I heard, I saw that Jason Snell had some comments on this on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious to know what you think.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jason said, which is primarily like, it takes two to tango, right? If you think this is tasteless, then it's to a certain extent up to you to stop covering it, or up to us as a society to stop paying attention. And I think it's the same sort of thing. It's analogous a little bit to the screen time, right? Where it's like, people complain about like everybody spending so much time on their phones, and like we put the onus on the device manufacturers to make tools to make that easier to sort of, shut down and monitor. But it's also up to us at the end of the day to have the responsibility for our own behaviors. And in the case of Apple events, it's no surprise that they're going to have a 2-hour commercial. There's nothing crass about that. Companies have been doing this forever, but it's a question of how you want to respond to it and react to it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it takes two to make a thing go right.
Yes.
Maybe even
out of sight.
Possibly.
Yeah.
It's true.
Maybe even that. Dan Moren, thank you so much for being here. And thanks so much for joining us. If people are looking to follow you online or check out your work, where can they do so?
You can find me on Twitter at dmoren. My personal website's dmoren.com. And you can find me on a bunch of other podcasts, including a little podcast called Clockwise, where I have a very charming co-host that you might know.
I've heard of that show.
Who? Co-host?
Who
Not
would
me.
that be?
Surprise.
Oh, the guy with the banana in his pocket.
I was just going to say.
You're so well dressed. I hardly ever get to see you, Mikah. So this is what I picture you as always looking like when we're recording.
Well, see, I don't usually wear pants when we're recording, but here on the show, I have to. It's a thing.
It's just respectful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jason, you're a lucky man.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you,
Mikah. I don't get this kind of treatment.
Thank you, Dad.
Take care, Dan. We'll talk to you soon.
And now it's time for our stories of the week.
Yay.
And this time, I am going to cheat a little bit because the final frontier isn't exactly tech. But here's the thing.
It's enough tech.
It's enough tech. And astronomers from the University College London have found water vapor in the atmosphere of a planet outside our own solar system. And I don't know what y'all think, but I think that's worth talking about. This is big news. This is an exoplanet, meaning a planet that does not exist in our own solar system, that has water vapor in its atmosphere that's not a gas giant.
Things like this make my brain hurt.
Now, why does it make your brain hurt?
It makes I love it, by the way. I love this news. Part of it is because like I have a limited understanding of how, and I suppose we as humans that exist only on planet Earth probably have a limited understanding of how things work out in space and everything. I'm even less than that. So for me, it's like, this sounds amazing, and I recognize that. When I start to think about the possibility of life on other planets and all this stuff, it just makes it like breaks me a little bit, because I want to understand and comprehend more about it than we are even possible of doing. And but discoveries like this just make me feel that maybe not in my lifetime, but sometime we will discover something that is an active human life form somewhere else. Or maybe we won't. It's entirely possible that we won't. And we are literally the only in billions upon billions of these things that has life on it. I doubt that's true. But anyways.
Speaking of that, I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of a shout out. I got to talk not too long ago about all the ways that the world could possibly, that humans could go extinct. And
that was on Triangulation.
That was on Triangulation. Yep. And when we were talking about that, one of the theories is that there is intelligent life out there, or at least there was at one point. But what happens is that when they get to the point of interstellar space travel, or even like to other galaxies, I guess is kind of the thing there. When they get to that point technologically, they end up killing themselves off before that ever happens. And so the reason we've never run into an alien species is because there's something about the way that that a species like grows and becomes more intelligent, that they can never get past that point because they end up in some way destroying themselves. So it's a very depressing theory, but it's an interesting one nonetheless.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because when I start thinking about space and all this stuff, by the way, Beatmaster points out in the chat room, only a little over 110 years to get there at light speed. So you're saying there's a chance.
You're right.
But anyways, when I start thinking about all this stuff, I get confused, because from our perspective here, it's so easy to fall into the trap of we feel like our world is the world, because to us it is, and it always has been in our own perspective. But there's so many our worlds out there to probably someone else. And at the end of the day, like, it feels kind of pointless. We are probably just like a single organism living inside of like a drop of water,
on top of a banana. Yeah.
On top of a banana, sitting in a pocket of some sort, somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes my brain hurt, because as much as I want to understand it, we are probably incredibly insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
And that's hard for humans to hear, because we are not built for that. I do want a couple more data points. The planet is called KT-18b. K2, thank you, not KT. Yep. K2-18b. Sorry, K2. And it is either a dense, rocky, cored planet with a thick atmosphere, or it is covered in a planet-wide ocean. But here's the deal. This data is so imprecise that scientists are able to put together a bunch of different models. And in one model, you've got a hydrogen-rich atmosphere with a lot of water and nothing else. Another, they think it could be a hydrogen and nitrogen-rich atmosphere with very little water. And then the third model, it's like water floating around in the upper atmosphere and high-altitude clouds. And so we don't actually know what would be on the planet's surface. But most importantly, according to the models, this is what's like, okay. It could be these percentages of water on the planet. There's either 0.01% water to 50% water.
Oh.
So somewhere in there.
A little bit of a swing.
Yeah. Basically, we don't know.
Yeah, there's a whole lot who don't know.
We've detected water vapor on a planet that's not a gas giant, on a somewhere outside of our solar system, but that's about it. Who knows how much water there is? It could be a very, very, very minuscule amount. And that's just the imprecise nature of the technology that we have right now.
Right.
But according to that one theory, if we get any better, then we're all going to kill ourselves off in the end anyway.
Yeah, totally. So why are we racing to do this now?
Yeah, let's stop now.
Seriously.
Space race 2? No.
Or maybe that's just how our organism works, our Earth organism.
It's what we do.
That exists inside of a drop of water. Well, my story is a lot less less interesting than yours by comparison. We're a month away from Google's hardware event. It's a little more like straightforward tech, so I apologize.
No, I'm glad you didn't cheat. Only one of us can cheat in a given episode.
1 month away from Google's hardware event that actually hasn't even been announced yet, but that's when they do it every year, so we can assume, especially when you consider that we are officially at the phase in Google's product hype cycle where very random YouTube accounts in lands far away begin posting full device hands-on and review videos of the next generation Pixel that, you guessed it, hasn't been shown in its entirety by Google at all yet. So it's all par for the course, basically. Last year, it was Ukrainian YouTubers. This year, Vietnamese and Thai YouTubers. In both cases, incredibly high quality, close-up, detailed, intimate reveals of literally everything that exists inside these phones that, by the way, have not been announced yet. And we still have a month to the event. So who knows what we're going to see over the course of the next month. We already know everything as we did this time last year. It's just like, I think I'm a little confused because a couple of months ago, there was some leaks about the Pixel 4. Mm-hmm. And Google immediately came out like the following day saying, yes. And, with these splashy promos, and everybody applauded Google because they were like, cool, you're like embracing the leak and you're getting out ahead of it instead of pretending it's not happening. Well, here we are now. And the only thing that Google could do to embrace the leak is literally just release the phone. That's the only thing they could do to be like, haha, we got you.
Yeah.
So anyways, we know everything. I'm curious if you've heard anything about the Pixel 4s and if they are wooing you from the iPhone 11 Pro.
So I am not likely to be wooed from
my
device, but I think on, from a hardware perspective and from a software perspective, particularly the algorithmic, machine learning, all those buzzwords nature of Google.
Yeah.
I find all of it very fascinating, and those things to me are worth a look. And if I were just like 7.4% more a fool, I would carry an Android device and an iOS device on the regular, just because I love like seeing those comparisons and seeing how one company does things versus another company. And like I said, with the technology that Google has available to it and how it goes so far into AI and things like that.
Totally. And how much they're learning from each other, right?
Exactly.
Like using one platform, you better believe you're going to see some of that stuff on the other platform.
Right. We just got the iOS version of Night Sight.
Right.
With the new phones. But before you continue to tell more about this, I know that it's sort of, everybody sort of goes, okay, yeah, we're doing the leaks again. But is it the theory that it's actually Google doing it, or is that just is that a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory?
Total tinfoil hat conspiracy. Some people believe it completely.
Where are you?
I'm not sure that
47% foil hat.
Yeah. What did you say? 7.7%? Probably more than that. 7% is not very much, by the way. So we could make you more foolish, pretty easily. I'm really uncertain where I sit on that. I think my gut is that Google is not doing this, that they would really, at the end of the day, love to be able to control this, to have a little bit of mystery. At the same time, it is the state of technology releases right now, is that leaks are part of that hype cycle.
Right.
And they are.
Yeah.
And, last year it was, I don't know if we ever found out exactly why just this swath of Ukrainian, YouTubers suddenly had access to these devices, or like, did it fall off a truck? Was there some sort of a production lab that had some leaky devices or whatever? This time around, I think that the production facilities, there's one in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. Karsten, producer of This Week in Google, mentioned that yesterday. I haven't read much into that. So that maybe there's some leak of some sort happening at the production facility. I doubt Google's there going, so here you go, guys, because these YouTube channels that are leaking them, they have like 120 subscribers. They're like, so maybe they are. Maybe that's part of the, exactly. Maybe that's part of the whole deal.
Do we have like
I just doubt it.
Dun 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 sound we can play right there? Soundboard.
You know what I mean? Like, I guess Google could be doing this, but I just have a feeling anyone in marketing wants to control the message a little bit more than this seems like they're able to.
And that's kind of my thing, is that For me, I don't. Okay, this is a little. Just stick with me here with this analogy. But I don't know if you've ever had a band that you absolutely loved, and a lot of people didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And then you love this band, you know their music, you've been listening to them for a long time, and then suddenly they show up on something and they get popular. And as you're seeing it get out there, you're seeing all these people sort of mishandling your band that you loved, and you're like, no, but you don't get it. You don't get how this song means this, and this is great. And that's kind of how I feel this would be for me if I was working at Google or Apple or wherever.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't understand because I'm not telling you exactly how you should feel about this.
Totally.
I would have a lot of trouble.
I think that's a really good analogy.
Thank you. Sometimes mine are really bad, so I'm glad that one worked.
No, I think that lands perfectly. I imagine if you're on the inside working on these devices, like I said, you want to be able to control the message. And when these leaks come out months in advance, it might be good for raising kind of like public conversation around your device, but there's still a lack of control that you have about the overall message. And at the end of the day, I don't know how effective it actually is. It's not like the Pixel is a barn burner. You know what I mean? Like it's doing okay, but it's nothing compared to Samsung and Apple devices. So I don't know that that's a strategy that really works. So anyways, I don't know if we need to get into too many of the details because I feel like we've covered it on the network, but basically, very comparable in many ways to the iPhone 11 Pro. You're going to see side-by-side comparisons. Oh, yeah. 6.23-inch OLED display with 539 pixels per inch, so very sharp screen. It will have a 90 hertz refresh rate for the display, which is something that we're seeing in a lot of Android phones now. Yeah. Or a decent amount of them now, going up from 60 hertz to 90 hertz. So just more fluidity in animations. Things look smoother. They call it smooth display. Battery usage will go up on that, though, so keep that in mind. Solely radar for in-air gestures, which
about that,
I think is neat, but I don't know how necessary it'll be.
We'll find out. Yeah, I'm curious about that myself.
3D face detection, similar to what you have on the iPhone. Which, do you like that, by the way? Does that work really well for you?
Face ID?
Face ID.
Yeah. Oh, hands down. It's fantastic. Okay. I don't need Touch ID. I have Face ID. It's great. Now, what colors does it come in? Does it have a cool rainbow color?
I don't know if it has a rainbow color. I did see some sort of like a coral, kind of like a light pink color.
See, isn't that that's normal?
But they tend to do kind of muted, different, like a little bit different, I suppose.
Orange and black?
It's kind of,
That's kind of cool. It's a little too basketball-y for me.
There's no green for you. I'm sorry.
What?
Although that would be pretty neat.
Now what pixel am I going to get?
I guess you're not. If there's no green pixel, I guess you're not going to get one.
Listen, Google, I'm telling you, you come out with a green pixel and it's a good green, I gotta be 8% fool.
Right. I was gonna say, how many percentage points does it move you up on the fool meter? So anyways, there you go. We'll see what this actually leads to. I'm assuming someday soon we're going to hear Google say, "Oh, we've got an announcement because we got to announce something."
Yeah, that phone you've been hearing about a lot.
We're going to do our official thing around that now.
It's time for you to hear about this.
Yeah,
a bright orange. Okay, black, white, and bright orange. It looks like a basketball. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm too keen on the orange color, but if you
want
the
white, that's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, right, because they do the kind of panda coloring with the white with the black.
Yeah, I love that.
They might have the black phone with the white button, the white power button. They do a little accent stuff like that. So
I see. That looks cool. I think of a zebra or a zebra.
Okay. Zebra. I think we've reached the end. Tech News Weekly records live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnw@twit.tv.
Yes, you can also subscribe to our show. That's already been said. No, you can subscribe to our show at twit.tv. We're doing it live. You can subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNW. You can also follow us on social media. Twitter, Instagram.
You know that thing.
It's, at least for me, I'm at Mikah Sargent in most of those places.
And I'm at Jason Howell. I just started I just got on this new social media service called Instagram.
Welcome to the platform.
Just look for Real Jason Howell, or I think it's Real Jason Howell, or no, it's not. It's that Jason Howell.
I was like, one.
Because there's a million Jason Howells on there, and I didn't want to do Jason Howell 552
I
54321.
like that Jason Howell. Yeah.
So that Jason Howell. The very first Instagram post is me and you on this set. So
I feel blessed.
Thanks for being there. Thanks to everyone who helps us do this show each and every week. John, Jeff, John, Burke, everyone, you guys are awesome. We appreciate your help.
We love
and you
you.
are awesome too for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Wow, that one almost blew me all the way back.